Dear listeners, today's story is a highly emotional tale of a young girl and her Christmas dream. Get ready to hear a story of determination, love, and the extraordinary power of perseverance. It will help you in your English speaking and listening practice. This story will leave you inspired, motivated, and emotional. The title of today's story is Christmas Lights in Our Small Window. And here we go. Christmas Lights in Our Small Window. Chapter 1. The Girl Behind the Frosted Window. Emily Harper always sat by the window when winter arrived. The glass was thin and slightly cracked at the corner, often fogged by her breath as she leaned closer to it. From there, she could see the street slowly transforming for Christmas. Houses across the road glowed with colorful lights, red, gold, blue, blinking like tiny promises. Laughter floated through the cold air. Somewhere nearby, a radio played a familiar carol, soft and distant. Emily's house was quiet in comparison. It stood smaller than the others, with peeling paint on the wooden door and only one dim bulb hanging above it. That single light flickered every now and then, as if tired from shining for so many years. But inside the house, warmth existed in a different way, not in decoration, but in presence. Emily was 13 years old. Thin, thoughtful, and often silent, she carried the weight of responsibility without knowing when it had settled on her shoulders. She was the third of 5 daughters. Her sisters filled the small house with noise, laughter, and sometimes tears. There was Anna, the eldest, serious and protective; Rose, gentle and observant; Lily, playful and curious; and little Grace, whose laughter could soften even the hardest day. 5 girls, one small home, one struggling family. Emily knew they were poor, but she had learned that poverty didn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it showed up quietly, in worn shoes polished carefully each morning, in shared school books, in meals stretched just enough for everyone to eat. Her parents never complained. Her father worked long hours doing whatever jobs he could find: repairs, deliveries, odd labor. Her mother stitched clothes late into the night, her fingers rough but steady, her eyes tired yet hopeful. They spoke softly about money, believing their daughters couldn't hear. But Emily always heard. She heard everything. At school, Christmas felt different. Classmates talked about gifts, vacations, and parties. Emily listened more than she spoke. She learned early that silence could be a form of strength. She kept her head high, even when her coat was thinner than others, even when her lunch was simpler. Sometimes, the world tried to make her feel small. But sitting by the window, watching the lights across the street, Emily didn't feel envy. She felt curiosity. She wondered how lives became different. She wondered if dreams noticed where they were born, or if they simply waited to be claimed. Behind her, her sisters argued over a paper star they were making from old notebook pages. Their laughter filled the room. The sound pulled Emily away from the window. She turned, smiling softly, and helped tape the star together. That night, as snow began to fall, Emily made a quiet promise to herself. She didn't know how or when, but she knew one thing clearly. She would not let their story end in struggle. The frost on the window thickened. The lights outside blurred. Inside, a dream was beginning to form. Chapter 2. Shoes That Knew the Road. Morning arrived quietly in the Harper house. The cold crept in before the sun, slipping through the cracks in the walls and settling into the floors. Emily woke before her alarm, as she often did. She sat up slowly, careful not to disturb her sisters sleeping beside her. The room was small, shared by all 5 girls, their beds pushed close together like pieces of a puzzle. Emily reached for her shoes. They were brown, worn, and slightly loose at the heel. The soles were thin, but clean. Every night she wiped them carefully, as if care itself could make them last longer. She tied the laces tightly and stood up, steadying herself. In the kitchen, her mother was already awake, stirring oatmeal on the stove. The smell was simple but comforting. "Eat well," her mother said gently, placing a small bowl in front of Emily. Emily nodded. She always nodded. Words were precious at home, used wisely, never wasted. Outside, the air was sharp. Emily walked to school with Anna and Rose, their breaths forming little clouds in the morning light. Christmas decorations lined the streets. Shop windows sparkled with things the girls had learned not to ask for. At school, warmth returned, but not always kindness. Students crowded the halls, laughing loudly, comparing gifts and holiday plans. Emily moved through them quietly. She felt eyes linger on her coat, on her shoes. Someone whispered. Someone giggled. She kept walking. In class, Emily sat near the window. She liked watching the snow drift down, slow and patient. Her teacher's voice faded in and out as Emily focused on her notebook. Her handwriting was neat, careful. Learning felt safe. It didn't judge. It rewarded effort. During lunch, Emily split her sandwich in half. One part for now, one part for later, for Lily, who sometimes forgot her lunch. When Lily hugged her tightly, Emily felt taller. In the hallway that afternoon, someone laughed openly. "Do you ever get tired of wearing the same shoes?" a girl asked, her voice sharp but curious. Emily paused. For a moment, shame tried to rise in her chest. But then she remembered her father's tired hands, her mother's quiet strength, her sister's laughter. She turned and smiled calmly. "They still work," Emily said. And she walked away. That evening, as Christmas lights flickered to life again, Emily returned to the same window. Her shoes rested near the door, worn but honest. She sat down with her books, studying as her sisters slept nearby. Dreams, she believed, didn't need new shoes. They just needed direction. Chapter 3: A Christmas Made of Paper and Hope. The Harper house smelled different in December. It wasn't the smell of expensive candles or rich food, but something gentler, warm bread, cinnamon, and effort. Emily noticed it every year. Christmas didn't arrive with noise in their home. It arrived quietly, carried in through small acts. That evening, Emily's mother spread old newspapers across the table. Scissors were placed carefully in the center, their metal handles worn smooth with use. "We'll make new decorations," her mother said with a soft smile. The girls gathered around, their fingers moving eagerly. Anna cut stars with careful precision. Rose folded paper into delicate shapes. Lily laughed as glue stuck to her hands. Grace clapped every time something new appeared. Emily watched them all, her heart full in a way that felt heavy and light at the same time. Their tree stood in the corner of the room, a small one. Borrowed from the edge of the forest nearby. It wasn't tall or perfect, but it was theirs. Each paper decoration carried a story, a memory, a promise. Later that night, her father came home tired. Snow clung to his coat, his hands were red from the cold. But when he saw the tree, his face softened. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. The girls beamed. Dinner was simple: soup, bread, and laughter. They sat close, shoulders touching. The light above the table flickered once, then steadied. After dinner, Emily's father cleared his throat. "Girls," he said, his voice low but firm, "we may not have much, but we have each other, and that is more than enough." Emily watched her mother's eyes glisten. She felt something settle inside her, a peace she hadn't known she needed. That night, as snow fell softly outside, Emily lay awake listening to her sisters breathe. She thought about school, about dreams, about the road ahead. For the first time, she didn't feel afraid of being poor. She felt strong. Because love, she realized, could warm a house better than any decoration. Chapter 4: A Dream Kept Quiet. Emily learned to keep her dreams folded neatly inside her heart. They lived there quietly, like letters never sent, carefully written, deeply felt, and hidden away where no one could dismiss them. She had learned early that dreams could feel heavy when spoken aloud, especially in a house where every day already carried its own weight. Each night after her sisters fell asleep, Emily sat at the small desk near the window. The lamp flickered softly, its light just enough to read by. Her notebooks were clean, her pages filled with careful handwriting. She loved the way knowledge unfolded, slowly, honestly, asking only effort in return. School was more than a place to learn. It was a doorway. Emily imagined a future where her parents rested without worry, where her sisters had choices instead of limits. She didn't dream of luxury. She dreamed of stability, of dignity, of a life where money was not a constant fear. But she told no one. During the day, she helped her mother with chores, walked her sisters to school, and listened when her father spoke of work that came and went. At night, she studied. She memorized facts. She practiced writing essays she never showed anyone. One evening, Anna noticed. "You don't sleep much," Anna said softly, watching Emily read. Emily smiled. "I like learning." Anna didn't question further. She understood more than she said. Outside, Christmas lights glowed faintly through the window. Emily closed her book and looked at them. This time, they didn't feel distant. They felt possible. She placed her notebook under her pillow and lay down, her mind still moving, still building. Dreams, Emily believed, didn't need permission. They needed patience. Chapter 5, The Boy Who Listened. Emily first noticed Noah Miller on a gray afternoon. The classroom was unusually quiet. Snow pressed softly against the windows, and the teacher's voice drifted calmly through the room. Emily sat near the back, her notebook open, her pen moving steadily. When she dropped her pen, it rolled forward, stopping near a pair of shoes she didn't recognize. Noah bent down, picked it up, and handed it back to her without a word. His smile was small, genuine. "Thank you," Emily said. Their eyes met briefly, then he turned back to his desk. From that day, Emily noticed little things. Noah stayed after class to help others. He listened more than he spoke. He never laughed when people whispered. When others rushed out at the bell, he walked calmly, as if time treated him gently. One afternoon, he sat beside her in the library. "You read a lot," he said quietly. Emily nodded. "I like understanding things." He smiled. "Me too." They studied together in silence. It was comfortable, safe. Over the following weeks, their conversations grew. They spoke about school, books, and dreams. Emily didn't tell him everything, not yet, but she didn't feel the need to hide either. One evening, as they walked home in opposite directions, Noah stopped. "You're different," he said. Emily felt her heart pause. "Different how?" "Strong," he replied, in a quiet way. Emily walked home with warmth she didn't recognize. That night, Christmas lights shimmered faintly through her window. Emily smiled to herself, not because someone noticed her, but because someone understood her. And that felt like something rare. Chapter 6, When Truth Finds Its Voice. Winter deepened, and with it, Emily's world grew quieter and more honest. She and Noah began sitting together more often, sometimes in the library, sometimes near the window where the snow made everything feel softer. Their conversations were never rushed. They spoke the way people do when they aren't trying to impress, only trying to understand. One afternoon, Noah asked gently, "Do you ever feel like you're carrying more than you should?" Emily hesitated. She looked at her hands, at the ink stains on her fingers, at the small scar on her wrist from helping her father fix a broken door. "Yes," she said finally. The words surprised her. They sat in silence for a moment, the kind that doesn't ask questions. Then Emily spoke again, slowly, carefully. She told him about her family, about sharing everything, about counting money, about wanting more not for herself but for them. She waited for his reaction. Noah didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. When she finished, he said softly, "Thank you for trusting me." Emily felt something loosen in her chest. "I was afraid," she admitted. "I know," Noah replied, "but you don't have to be with me." That was when she learned something important. Trust grows where judgment does not exist. Outside, Christmas decorations were being taken down, but something inside Emily was beginning to shine. She walked home that evening lighter than before. For the first time, her truth didn't feel heavy. Chapter 7, The Winter That Tested Us. The cold arrived without warning. It wasn't just the weather, it was the kind of cold that settled into daily life, making everything harder. One evening, Emily noticed her father sitting at the kitchen table long after dinner, his hands folded tightly, his eyes fixed on nothing. He had lost his job. Work had been slow for weeks, but this time there was no promise of something new. The house felt smaller that night, quieter. Even the walls seemed to listen. Anna spoke first. "I can quit school," she said quickly. "I'll work." "No," their father said firmly. "Education stays." Emily watched her mother silently count coins at the table, her lips pressed together. Fear returned, not loudly but persistently. The days that followed were heavy. Bills piled up. Rose stopped humming. Lily asked fewer questions. Grace clung to their mother more tightly. Emily felt the pressure settle, fully onto her shoulders. But instead of breaking, something in her steadied. She began helping more, selling baked goods with her mother, taking small tutoring jobs after school, applying for scholarships late into the night. She didn't tell her family everything. She didn't want to add to their worry. One evening, Noah noticed her exhaustion. "You don't have to carry this alone," he said gently. "I have to," Emily replied. "For them." Noah nodded. "Then let me walk beside you." That winter didn't break the Harper family. It shaped them. Chapter 8. The letter written by candlelight. Christmas Eve arrived quietly that year. There were no surprises under the tree, no shiny boxes wrapped in bright paper. The Harper house glowed softly under candlelight, the electricity saved for later, just in case. Outside, snow fell steadily, covering the world in a clean, forgiving white. Emily sat at the small table, long after everyone else had gone to bed. A single candle burned beside her, its flame trembling but steady, much like her heart. She opened her notebook and turned to a blank page. For a long moment, she stared at it, listening to the gentle sounds of the house, her sisters breathing, the wind brushing against the walls, her parents whispering softly in the next room. Then she began to write. She wrote about the year, the fear, the strength, the quiet victories no one applauded. She wrote about her sisters and how each of them carried bravery in different ways. She wrote about her parents, whose sacrifices never asked for recognition. And finally, she wrote about herself. Not with pride, but with honesty. She wrote a promise to keep studying, to keep believing, to never let hardship turn into bitterness. She wrote that being poor was not her identity, only her starting point. She wrote that love had already made her rich in ways money never could. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and placed it beneath the tree. Emily blew out the candle and stood by the window one last time. Christmas lights shimmered faintly across the street. This time, they didn't feel distant or painful. They felt patient. As she lay down beside her sisters, Emily closed her eyes with a calm she had never known before. Hope, she realized, didn't arrive loudly. It arrived when you were ready to receive it. Chapter 9. When light arrived quietly. The email arrived on an ordinary morning. Emily almost ignored it. She was rushing to get ready for school, tying her worn shoes as usual, when she noticed the notification on the old computer her family shared. The subject line was simple, too simple. She opened it slowly. Her breath caught. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She read it again, and again, just to be sure. The scholarship had been approved. For a long moment, Emily sat perfectly still. Then she covered her mouth, afraid her joy might wake the whole house too soon. But joy refused to stay quiet. Her mother was the first to hear her cry. She came running, worry already in her eyes, until Emily handed her the screen. Her mother's hands trembled as she read. Then she laughed. Then she cried. The sound woke the rest of the house. Anna stared, disbelief turning into pride. Rose hugged Emily tightly. Lily danced around the room, shouting. Grace clapped as if she understood everything. Their father stood quietly at the doorway, his eyes shining. "You did this," he said, his voice breaking. "You all did." That evening, the family sat together in silence, not because they were afraid, but because they were overwhelmed with gratitude. The future hadn't changed overnight, but something important had shifted. For the first time, the road ahead felt visible. Emily stepped outside later that night. Snow crunched under her feet. Across the street, Christmas lights still glowed, patient and warm. Noah stood nearby, waiting. "I heard," he said softly. Emily nodded. She couldn't speak. "I'm proud of you," he said. So was she. Chapter 10. Christmas didn't change us, we changed. Christmas morning arrived quietly, as it always had. The Harper house looked the same, small, simple, familiar. Paper stars still hung on the tree. The single bulb near the door flickered softly. Snow rested gently on the roof. But inside, something was different. Emily sat by the window, the same one she had watched for years. The frost on the glass was thin now. The lights across the street still shimmered, but they no longer felt distant or unattainable. They felt like companions on the road ahead. Her sisters gathered around the table, laughing over breakfast. Anna talked about her plans for the future. Rose hummed softly. Lily told stories that made everyone smile. Grace leaned against their mother, safe and warm. Emily's parents watched them all with quiet pride. Nothing magical had happened overnight. They were still careful with money, still living simply, still learning. But fear was gone. Later that day, Emily stepped outside with Noah. Snow fell lightly, brushing their shoulders. They stood together in silence, comfortable and sure. "You never gave up," Noah said. Emily smiled. "I never felt alone." She realized then that being poor had never been the problem. Fear had been, and fear no longer lived in her heart. That Christmas, Emily made peace with her story. She understood that her past had shaped her, not limited her. That love had trained her to be strong. That honesty had taught her courage. That dreams, when followed patiently, could change the future without erasing where you came from. As evening settled, Emily returned to the window one last time. The frost was gone now. She looked at her reflection and smiled. Sparkles they didn't wait for life to change. They became strong enough to change it themselves. Sparkles. And that was enough. The end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We truly hope it touched your heart and reminded you of the power of believing a little bigger, even when life feels small. If this story inspired you, brought a smile, or gave you something to think about, please take a moment to like the video. It really helps us reach more listeners like you. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt, meaningful stories that celebrate hope, courage, and everyday heroes. Your support allows us to keep sharing one new inspiring story every single day, crafted with love and meant to brighten your moments, just like this one. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and remember, every great change begins with a simple thought.